If you want, Lynn, I could start with just a little introduction about what our plan is and how we're going to have today go. And then when Pat joins us, she's going to pick up on the discussion part of our time together. So, Lynn and I, as part of the training committee, have worked on the policy. And we didn't necessarily put in the policy everything we want in the policy, but we did put in the policy some of the things that are currently happening and some of the things that people have asked for. And we're very aware that if there's 20 people or 30 people on this call, there may be 30 different opinions about what we should do with this training policy. So the goal of this meeting is not to have definitive answers. If we get to definitive answers, great. The first one I'm starting with is really a yes or no, and we're going to take a vote, and that might just be the end of it. We may be unanimous. It'll be easy. We're going to start with the easy ones and work our way up into the more complicated ones. And if we need to, which I believe we probably will, we'll do a second, like part 2 of this, and we'll get everybody's feedback. That's the goal, is to get everyone's feedback, to have people listen to each other, because there are some considerations that you may not be aware of. So we want everyone to hear everybody's point of view. And then what we're hoping for today is that we'll come away with options for each of these points if we don't have agreement. And then we're going to create a survey where we're going to have all of our instructors go to the survey and vote for what they think is best. We don't want to try to come up with a definitive answer today. So that's the plan. We're going to break you into small groups so you can discuss some of the more complicated things and then come back and report. And the reason that we're looking so hard for Pat Roby is because she was going to be the facilitator of those conversations so that Lynn and I could be a part of the discussion. And Pat, if you don't know who Pat Roby is, Pat is the person. When Dr. Glasser retired, he chose Al Katz from New York, currently from Florida, to be the person who approved all of the advanced instructor material. That was Al Katz. And then when Al decided he needed to retire, he chose Roby. So that's how an educator at Governor State University here in Chicago. So that will serve as her just brief introduction, and I'll let her tell you a little bit more about herself when she gets on here. So the first question that was brought up, we have had people ask, and I think it might prevent a lot of confusion. So the first question is, should the Institute award certificates for completion of practicum? We never have. I'm not sure why. We don't even keep track of it in the database, but I don't know if any of you as instructors have had the situation where someone comes back to you after 20 years and says, I took practicum with you back in 1922. Can you verify that? And you may not be able to. So if we could give certificates, then we would have a record. We'd have to create the database that would, that would be able to keep track of practicums. So that is probably the downside, if there is a downside. So we thought if we could just have people write in the chat, yes or no. Here's Pat Roby, perfect timing. If everybody says yes, then we'll just take that one as a done deal and we'll write that into the policy. If there's a no, we'll put it on the Survey Monkey for later. So if you could write in the chat, and let me just pause. I've spilled my tea. If you keep seeing me look down, I'm trying to pick up some things off my desk before they get ruined. I saw Pat Roby jump in. Pat, do you want to say hello and introduce yourself?
Hi,
I did a little introduction.
Hello, everybody. It's good to see you. This is the late, great Pat Roby. On Teletech, any other day I would be awake at 5:30 in the morning, but not this day when I was supposed to be awake at 5:30 in the morning. Anyway, glad to be here with you now and to see your smiling, beautiful faces. So let's have a great meeting. Thanks you for inviting me and setting it all up.
You're welcome. So I'm gonna check the chat.
How do you put yes? Do I just hit?
You just print yes and then push enter. And if there's any questions, we're certainly open. It seemed like a fairly easy one.
Susan, I'm really happy to hear that you keep records. Is that from your new database that you have, or have you always done that?
Yeah, we've always done it. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
And check records. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful.
Hi, Susan.
Hello.
I
Good to see you again.
haven't seen from everyone yet. Oh, Maggie Bolton, God bless you. She said she's
Yay,
kept her
Maggie.
own records since 1994. I'm not surprised and I'm impressed. I would have names of people, it's true, but I don't always remember. And then they may be going on to their advanced practicum, and I may not remember who they are. I know their name, but I don't know what they did in practicum, and I have to co-verify. And I just think it would be lovely if we gave certificates. That's the first thing. So I'm going to wait for that to fill up. I haven't seen a single no yet. And this goes right along with that. And it goes with what I was just saying about not being able to remember what people did in practicum years later when they decide to go on to certification. And that is, do you think that during certification, we should have applicants complete their application to attend the next level of programming? Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze now. It's something I do every morning. Go ahead, Lynn.
To announce that you're going to do it, though, Kim. Because otherwise we wouldn't have known.
Right.
So I think we're talking about in, say, the advanced week.
Or even after the basic training or a basic practicum. When you complete a basic practicum, there's an application to attend advanced training. And when you complete the advanced practicum, there's an application to attend certification. And if people would complete those at the end of practicum, things would be fresh in their minds and they would have them, whether or not they're going to go on to the next level. I believe it would be easier for the practicum supervisors to be able to complete them at the end of training, but that's just my opinion.
Are you asking for people to vote on that?
I didn't understand, Kim. Would you explain it again, what you're asking us to vote on?
Yes. So there is paperwork that we have that it's called application to attend advanced training before you go on to your advanced training. And there's also an application to complete certification. Those things are typically by institute policy, they're completed prior to the person attending that phase of programming. And it's supposed to be co-verified by their practicum supervisors. But a lot of time can elapse between completion of those programs and their next level. So we're saying it might make more sense for people to complete that application to attend their next level at the end of practicum so that it'll be done and the practicum supervisor won't have to remember who they are and what happened during the practicum. So that's the thought there. So I think that's one that we can also just put in the chat. If you would, to distinguish it from the first question, just write APP for app and then yes or no in the chat. If I get a no, we'll put it on the SurveyMonkey survey.
I think the thought is if somebody comes back after 4 or 5 years saying, I did the practicum, I think I want to go on to the advanced, it can just be harder to remember putting even relevant information on the form. So it just seemed when you've just finished the basic practicum or the advanced practicum, you could complete that form in a kind of current, fresh way.
The other thing that's on the form is dates, and sometimes that's even harder to remember are the dates. Yes, Amir, I saw your hand.
Yeah, what I've seen here is a competency gap between when people participate, for example, in advanced training, and it's they did the basic practicum, for example, 2, 3, 4 months ago. We see that they are not competent enough to do the drills, the exercises. They have forgotten many basic things. So do you think this signing form may help or change something, that these people come with enough competency to be able to pass that level? We see that especially in levels from practicum to advanced, and especially from advanced to advanced practicum. We see many people in advanced practicum level, they come and we need to, just examine everything from the basic practicum. So because of the, it takes time. They do this week, and after 4 months, 6 months, 7 months, they come for another week. So we have this impact on their quality. So do you think this may help?
My thought is that this would not be designed to help competence. However, we are looking at creating a competency-based model for training. We already have some competencies up on the WGI website. They're not being used by everyone, but we do have them. That is going to take a much longer time. So Lynn and I have been calling this the interim certification policy. And I can just tell you that switching to a fully competence-based model is, I don't even know what to say about that. It's going to take some time to develop, because we don't, even on the training committee, we don't have complete agreement about what that looks like and what we want it to look like. So that'll take some time. In the meantime, I'm thinking, I made a note, Amir, what I'm thinking might be a good thing to do is to offer maybe a review session prior to training for people who think that they need it. So I just saw a question. I see some no's and I see some yeses. So we'll definitely, maybe we should go to small groups and just talk about what people are thinking about this. I don't want to give a long time, because I'm going to tell you, just to give context, we have 16 points that we need to talk about. 16. We only have 90 minutes. So I think it's pretty safe to say we're probably not going to get through all of that. But for things that don't seem to be too complicated, I'm going to do groups and ask people just to talk about what they think, but to be mindful of the time. I'm thinking if we divide groups into groups of 4, and I give 5 minutes for this particular one. There's other ones that I'll have to give much more time, but this one I think could just, we're not trying to convince each other. We're just trying to get all of the points on the table and then come back and report what your group said. And then if your group hasn't reported yet and somebody's already given your feedback, then you would just not add yours because it's already been said. Well, Pablo, I see your hand, and then Lynn, I see you.
Sure. I wanted to propose that if we complete all the different points that you were thinking about, all the questions that you want to ask, and then leave the no's or the possible discussion points at the end so that we can just have one breakout and maybe talk about those, and not every time if you think it's interesting that way.
Well, we did talk about doing that one, Pablo. We were trying to figure out which way would be best. And what we thought was we'd have to do it for each point, because if we did it all at the end, then things would not be covered. So are you talking about covering the points all together and then breaking out?
No, just the no's, just the ones
Okay.
that you want us to discuss. Depends on how many, you know. If-
Well, they're not all yes, no questions. We just started with those. So,
But go ahead and try it out and see.
okay.
We're
I wanna
running out of time.
Yeah, I want to give you 5 minutes. There's some no's on this one, so it will go to the Survey Monkey, but I do want to hear from people. And please know that if you have a question, you want to speak, if you could go down to the bottom of your screen where it says reactions and raise hand, that'll move you to the top of the screen so I can see you, because I actually have 2 screens of people and I can't see everybody. You might be raising your hand, waving your hands, and I still won't see you because you're on my second screen. So raising the hand would be great. Lynn, you had something.
I wonder if we want to separate the application from basic practicum to attend advanced, because it's quite different than the advanced practicum to go to certification, which is where we're really setting the competency more, Amir. You know, many people from the basic practicum, they're just really getting the feel of the ideas and so on. And in the advanced week, we want to add more information, layer it in, give them more practice. So just a thought in your conversation when we break out, whether you're talking basic practicum or the advanced practicum.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. But I gave you 1 more minute because I knew you probably spent 5 minutes on introductions and talking about who you are and didn't get any real time to talk about this issue. But since most people have said yes, that they want these applications completed at the end of the practicum. And of course, if that's what you want, there's nothing preventing you from doing that. Okay, so you can just do that whether or not that gets written into the policy or not. But I'd like to hear the no's and whoever's representing the group, and why you would want the no, why you think it's not necessary, or what the challenge would be with doing it in real time with people in the practicum. So who has a dissenting opinion? If you could raise your hand. Again, I can only see the first page of people. Okay, Juan Pablo.
I don't know if I'm supposed to talk, but I wanted to share what I understood differently in the discussion with Lynn and Claire, that it would be very important to have kind of a centralized, in the centralized database, when the person took the basic practicum, so that the advanced instructor, either for advanced training or their certification training, would know when they took it and if they approved it. And if, you know, it was a long time ago, maybe they could choose meet with that person, accept the application, and choose to meet with that person maybe some hours before or a day before, if they took the basic and they want to go into advanced 4 years ago, let's say. So I think it's more an issue of having the information and the instructor being able to make an informed decision for the competence or the skills that are needed. So I'm off. Maybe Lynn has more from the group.
Juan Pablo, just to clarify, it sounds like you're in favor of the paperwork being done.
Yes, now I'm in favor for the paperwork. The application, I don't know. Maybe we're confusing application to having it recorded in the database when
Yeah,
they the practicum and when they took it, with whom,
Right.
and for how long, and when, and if
That
they
was
yeah.
part of the first conversation. So if they're getting certificates, we're going to get that information and put it in the database. So that will happen. So perhaps what we're hearing is that those applications may not even be necessary. That people don't have to complete those applications prior to their next phase, as long as it's in the database that they did it. And then instructors can take their initiative to meet with people who it's been a long time for. Is that what I'm hearing?
And mostly if I take the basic training and the basic practicum in Colombia, and then I go to the States and I want to take the advanced course, they're not going to have my information today with how we're set up today. It would be
Right.
hard to get the basic practicum supervisor and so forth. So yeah, I would be for that.
Okay, so what that does is exactly what I was hoping for. It gives us 3 options for our survey. So the survey will say, what should we do about the application to attend advanced training, application to attend certification? And one option would be, we should complete it at the end of practicum to have that information memorialized. The other would be with the certification that, or with the certification of practicum, it will be included in our database, so it's not necessary to even complete those forms. And the other one would be people who say, no, those forms should be completed immediately prior to attending the next session. So that's what we'll have. If anybody has any other feedback that would contribute to the conversation differently than we've already heard, raise your hand. I see Liz, I see you. So go ahead, Liz.
I see the application as another version of self-evaluation. If they are able to complete their advanced practicum, they would be able to self-evaluate themselves as to where they are in their competencies and in their readiness to present a topic of application, to be able to role play at certification week. So if this is part of the exercise of advanced practicum, I don't see it as bad. I see it as a form of, validation of their own achievements during practicum.
Okay.
And of course, it is a data that is very accessible. Like with this data, we can also put them like on a waiting list. So when the next opportunity for certification comes about, they will be informed and they'll be invited because they've already applied.
Right. Right. Okay. That's good. That's good feedback. I'll put that down on my list. Anybody else?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I actually think that's enough for that particular topic.
Lynn has
Lynn
her
has her
hand
hand
up.
Oh, Lynn has her hand up. Go ahead, Lynn.
I think perhaps I'm just realizing that the word approval could be part of what's hanging people up. So if it's just a form that confirms you've completed the basic practicum, but when you say approval, people start to think about self-evaluation and all of those kinds of things, readiness and so forth. So there seems to be quite a difference between a basic practicum to me and an advanced practicum saying you're ready for certification. So that's why I was saying we should maybe consider seeing them differently.
Juan Pablo.
I mean, I think if we have instructors at the Institute, we need to trust them in the co-verification process. I mean, they are the representatives of WGI, and they would say, I can co-verify that this person is ready for advanced training, and that means that they have accomplished the skills needed and the knowledge needed to continue, not just the hours. So, I mean, that's if approval is not an interesting word for people, for me, it's co-verification. They're the goalkeepers in that sense, and say, well, if you think that to a participant, if you're an instructor or a supervisor, you say, you think you're ready. I don't think you're ready because of this. Let's try and work it out. That is very important for competency-based. So anyway, I'll shut up. I know there are many other issues.
Yeah. Would you like me to run through all the issues so you know what they are, and then you'll get a sense of how much time we're going to need? Okay, so let me just quickly do that. There's some question about whether we should call this policies or guidelines for certification training, what minimum length the certification process should be. Should it be a year, 18 months, 24 months? What minimum hours should an intensive training be? Can we change the minimum age? Because our policy says you can't take a basic training if you're under 21. What should the minimum number be for basic, advanced, or certification? How many hours of face-to-face should a practicum be? Could the first day of basic intensive be open to the public? That's what our policy currently says. Should the basic and advanced intensive ever be combined together? Is 30 days enough notice for announcing an upcoming training versus 60 days? Should the certificate given at certification just say choice theory certification or CT-RT like it currently does, or CT-RT and LM? Should Zoom synchronistic training be an approved method of delivery, even when we're no longer dealing with COVID numbers? Are you in favor of offering online hybrid training with a minimum of 8 hours of real-time role playing with a certified instructor? And 3, we have this policy at the Institute that it's recommended that you have 5 different instructors for the process, but 3 different instructors are required. And we say in the policy that the requirement is for basic, advanced, and cert. They all have to be different instructors. We have a proposal that 3 people could be any phase. So one person could do basic intensive, basic practicum, advanced intensive, and then someone different could do advanced, someone different could do certification, as long as at some point during your training, you have 3 different people. So that's a change that we're thinking about. And what should the maximum number of participants be for a certification group? So those are the 16 points, just so you know. So it's a lot. And it's ambitious and probably not realistic to think we'll get through all of that. We now have 30 minutes left, give or take. So we'll just get started with what we have. So the next one is and I'm going to share this, and then Pat's going to facilitate the discussion afterwards. I'm not going to talk once you come back from group. The next one is, what should the minimum length of certification process be? 12, 18, or 24 months? Now, the reason this comes up is because it was always 18, and there was some policy in the, our policy said it was really 17 because you could count the month they started and the month they ended. Even though it said 18, it was like, yeah, but really it's 17 months. A few years back, there was some tweaks made policy, and it was changed 12 months. And I believe, I don't know if this will ever happen, but if we move to a fully competency-based model, people would be able to test out and not have to go to basic or not have to go to, practicum if they know enough. And, so it's possible that this will be irrelevant when we move to the competence model. But for right now, we need to have a minimum length. So I'll send you to your small groups and see if you can process each person, give their opinion about why. So we have some people, and they're not actually in this group, to speak to the pain point for you, Stephen. We have, and for everybody really, we have some people who think that certification takes way too long. I have heard from people, you could become a brain surgeon or an airline pilot faster than you could become an instructor of choice theory reality therapy. So there are some people who think it should happen faster. I know our friends in Kuwait in particular would like the process to be faster, and they think that it should especially be faster for people in the helping professions already. Like if you're a psychiatrist or a counselor, it shouldn't have to take that long. I don't know what everybody else has found, but personally, I'm a counselor, and I have found counselors need more time rather than less because they have to unlearn what they've already learned. So that's my point about that. But and then we have other people like our European colleagues who have developed 4-year and 5-year programs that confer degrees on people. So they could be degreed as a counselor or degreed as a psychotherapist if they attend the 5-year program. So there is that distinction. So I'd like to have you go into small groups. I'm going to give you generously 10 minutes this time to see what you can come up with for these. Does anybody have any questions before I do that?
Yes, Kim, sorry, I have a question.
Okay, Stephen.
Yeah, so even in Singapore, we also have different groups of students or participants. You've got counselors.
Stephen, I did that. I was trying to lower your hand and I muted you by mistake. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We have got different groups of participants in Singapore, like counselors, school teachers, and members of public / people from the other working industries. So the question that I like to ask you really to verify or to clarify is that because of these different groups, the quality picture of the certificate to these 3 different group of participants are very different. To the counselors, it meant one thing, the quality picture to a counselor and to a school teacher, and then to the members of public, they see it differently. So when we are going to this discussion, I think would it be good that we have a common understanding of what is the quality picture of this certificate that we are talking about. Then at least from there, we know the denominator or the quality picture of what we want to achieve. Because if I'm coming from a counselor, I may, like for example, say I need 5 years. But if I'm coming from a member of public, I say, there's no one going to do 5 years. I mean, I can do a PhD if I'm going to do 5 years. So that's my question. Thank you.
And what a great question that is. In most of our member organizations, they don't have the luxury of being able to divide participants in different training groups. So most training groups are very eclectic. They would have everybody in them. And I personally have said that that's not a really, in the age of the internet, it would be much more helpful if we had specific trainings, because people are looking for training for teachers, training for counselors, and they won't find our training because it's not specific enough. But that's something that is actually beyond the scope of what we are talking about here. But if you want to discuss that in your group and come back with a recommendation about time for different people, I think that would be fine. But what I want you to be thinking about is in our current eclectic groups that we have, what do you think would be best? You can add that. We'll add it to our list of things that we need to discuss. That's something I would love to see included in the competency-based model. We're just not there yet. Are there other MOs who do specified training for different groups of people? You're Singapore, right, Stephen? Did you say Singapore?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, I think most people are doing eclectic groups. Okay, so I'm going to give you, like I said, I'll give you 10 minutes this time.
Can you repeat the question we're working on? This is specifically, or let me clarify, this is specifically about the minimum length of time the certification process should be, right?
Right, right.
That's what we
And
want to
just,
come out with. Okay,
just know that currently it's 12 hours.
What?
no, I'm,
No, the length
I'm
from,
sorry, it's 24 hours. Sorry, Susan, Susan almost had a heart attack. It's 24 hours.
24
Lynn.
months.
Months.
You're saying hours, Kim, you mean months.
Yeah.
Let me regroup because I'm trying to do breakout sessions. Think about that. And it's true, you cannot multitask. So I got confused. We are going to talk about hours later, and it is currently 24 hours instead of 27, but we're now talking about the length of time, and it's currently 12 months. And in the past, our policy was 18. And there's also a nod to 24 months for the people who think that it should be longer than what it's been in the past. So we'll again decide on who's going to be the leader of your group and inform when we come back and hear everybody's points and the rationale why. You'll be in groups of 4 or 3 again.
Someone being called back to the main group right now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
hello, everybody. Welcome back. I
Hello.
can't tell if everybody's back or not. So Kim, can you just let me know if everybody's returned?
They will have had to return. They didn't have a choice about it.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that that was this kind of meeting. All right. So what we're going to
No,
do is we're just going to be reporting now. So I'm just going to go for groups from 1, 2, 3, 4. So group 1, can we have the person who was going to be the group representative give us a summary of what you discussed regarding this question? So someone from group 1?
So I think room 1 was us, Pat. So I think for us, we agreed with the 12 months. And I think in Sonia's group, they even do 24 months. So what we said is we have, experienced the difficulty that people have with internalizing concepts, and making it shorter might impact on that. It also, the issue around competing with other training programs that happens much faster and people are certified much faster. But we said we need to be conscious of the brand that we're building, and that when we put people through to different phases and to the next phase, we feel people are actually competent, even though we don't use a competency-based model yet, but at least it allows us for people to make sure they internalize the concepts. So for now, we agreed with the 12 months period.
Okay, thank you very
And-
much. So I'm going to move on from group 1 to, and if anybody at the end of this wants to add something that was missed from your group, let's just do that at the end. So let's go to group 2. And group 2, we're going to be just anything that you want to add that hasn't been said already. So that's how we're going to move forward. So who's going to represent group 2?
Oh, we agreed with the 12 months training month, but we said it shouldn't be a one size fits all, because it depends on the cost and the location, and the access to trainers and people's own skills. And the competency-based model would actually resolve some of those issues for us too, in terms of the timing.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Group 3?
Yeah, though we agree with 12 months, but it must be really based on competencies, on the skills. So it's actually not a matter of months, it's the depth of knowledge and the application you have, whether the participants can really apply. So we were actually talking about practicum. I personally and overall we also agree it's not possible for prepare a person 12 hours face-to-face to be ready for certification or advanced or even for basic. For myself personally, I have done for 24 hours to 40 hours advanced practicum. Even if I do it in 12 months, that means they have to meet like almost every week or every other week. So on the one hand, we say 12 months. On the other hand, we are saying it's actually not a matter of months. It's your depth of skills. It's whether they really know how to apply and really know how to use it in their own personal life and in their job. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Claire. Okay, and group 4.
Siva?
Maggie, are you speaking? Okay, there we go.
No,
Siva.
I was just recalling which group I was in. Okay, so thank you, Maggie. So when we discussed, we think 12 to 18 months is required basis the skill and the will. The rest of it, everybody else have discussed, because like to imbibe the concepts and also the outcome is important here, especially when there is an eclectic group. So perhaps we during the basic practicum that I went through with Farida, it was about more than 18 months that we had taken to practice. So I guess it's 12 to 18 months could be the right gestation time.
Okay, thank you. So that is from all the groups. Is there anything, so we want to keep moving along, so that's why I'm facilitating that this way, but is there anything that wasn't mentioned that is really important right now that somebody wants to say before we go to the next question?
One group is remained, I think, group 5.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, group 5.
That's okay.
I apologize for that.
That's okay. I start, Kanchan, Steve, and then please you add up to it. We thought that for 12 months, it's very difficult for people to internalize a new language called choice language, to be able to do the interviews, the role plays, and internalize the theory. So we think the minimum of 18 months is necessary for the people. Supposing that we have an electrical group, okay? Maybe later on in that competency model, when we specific the groups for counselors, therapists, coaches, we can, make a shorter path, a shorter length. But at the moment, we think that 18 months is necessary.
Okay, thank you very much. And sorry, group 5, no disrespect intended. All right. Any last comments before I turn it back to Kim? Juan Pablo, are you waving your hand? You want to say something?
Yes, just something quick. I mean, I was saying in my group that if we're continuing with the 4 kinds of applications in the current certification program, mental health, counseling, teaching and managing, the amount of hours is going to be important for that knowledge to be integrated and used in the skills. So more the hours than the time. In terms of semesters or months. But if we go to certification programs that are specialized, like teaching with choice theory or choice theory teaching, choice theory managing, choice theory parenting, things like that, they could, the hours and the knowledge and skills would be reduced. So, that's something to think about, as Stephen was asking before breaking. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm just scanning. I don't see any
Dr.
hands
Liz.
up.
Dr. Liz has her hand up.
Oh, Dr. Liz.
Yes. I think my group had some reservation about the 24 months. We wonder whether, the 24 months may be a bit long and the participants may lose their momentum of learning, because, it is like, dragged out for a long time. So just to keep in mind the momentum of learning, whether, we agree with 12 to 18 months.
Thank you so much. I think what I'm hearing consistently is the need that we have for competency and deciding what we're measuring And how is that? It's a challenge to decide what kind of time there's supposed to be for this. All right, thank you so much, Kim. Do you see any other hands up?
I do not.
Okay, I will turn it back over to you.
Okay. If I do the next one, I think we could just type a word in the chat. It'll be one more we can cross off our list. And that one is, should this be called certification training policy or certification training guidelines? And the background on that is when WGI became an umbrella organization, we wanted to be more of a guide rather than an authoritarian. These are the policies that you must follow, but we also understand the need for clarity and the need for for there to be a governing body who holds people accountable for quality's sake. So that's really kind of the difference between words for us, whether it's guidelines or policy. So if you could just write in the chat what you think, and then we can put this also in the SurveyMonkey if there's not agreement with everyone. Okay. All right. So while you're doing that, I'll go on to the next thing that I think we're going to need to spend some time talking about. And that is, and again, this won't be as critical when we move to competence, but at this point, we need to specify the minimum number of hours an intensive training should be. Currently, it's 24. It had been 27 for the longest time, and 5 or 6 years ago, it was changed to 24. And the rationale why it was changed to 24, the pain point was we had a policy that said you can do a 3 or 4 day basic training. And if you do a 3-day training, it's 21 hours. And if you do a 4-day training, it's 27 hours. And people got the same certificate, even though they did 6 more hours of training. So it was very challenging to explain that to our customers. What's the difference between a 3 and 4 day training? And in all practicality, what I saw in the certifications that I either did or observed, what I saw with the 3-day trainings and the 21 hours was people were skipping over the lead management part. There were people in certification who never heard of lead management. So we wanted to meet in the middle and make it 24 hours. That was the rationale for the change, so that whether you're doing a 3 or a 4-day training, you're going to give them 24 hours. So we're offering 24 or 27, and then the third choice would be to make the hours different for a 3 or a 4-day training. So those are the things we'd like you to discuss in your breakout sessions. And again, I'm going to give you 10 minutes.
If we could also just emphasize that we're talking about minimum, not maximum.
Okay, so noted and so emphasized. Since everyone had no choice but to be back here right now, I think everybody might have heard that. So we're talking about minimum, not maximum. All right, so let's start with group number 1 again. What was the summary for your group?
That was our group. And I think we agreed with 24, but we're all very aware that, you know, competency is a growing thing, and people can leave certification and feel like they're still at the beginning of the learning journey. But most of us are leaning into more. We had a creative idea from Kathy in terms of when we move towards competency, that we actually look at skill sets where people can come in and do a module of a skill and then keep building the skills that way.
Thank you very much. I have to say that when it comes to competency, I have realized in my life I will never be done. So it's a moving target, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, group 2.
Group 2, it was me, Denzel, and Juan was there in the group, and we agreed to a minimum of 27 hours. So now how we came up to this conclusion was the 4 applications that have to be completed in choice theory. It minimum takes that time to understand and put in the concepts and internalize the concepts and then take it forward. So we decided on 27 hours. Denzel and Juan, if there's something more that you want to put in, Sharon, please do.
I think we said generally 27 hours, but we do take cognizance that there might be skilled trainers that might actually be able to do it in 24. So we would, in that sense, 24 would be acceptable. Yeah.
But we do not
I'm not
agree. But we do not agree on leaving out lead managing or anything at
Yes.
all.
Right.
Yeah.
If we're
Absolutely.
if we're continuing with the eclectic kind of all applications of choice theory certification.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Group 3.
Marina, you want to do?
Well, we group 3, well, Maggie and I both agreed that 27 was the minimum that we should come up with. But when Sonia explained about the 24 and then doing a backup, it did make sense for her type of, for the way they were training. But for me, no, 27, sometimes it goes to 30 also. But 27 is something I would agree to. And I'm sure the 2 from our faculty here did find it going beyond 27 hours. Okay. And especially when we have to include lead management.
Okay, thank you so much. Group 4.
Okay, I guess it's us. We agreed on 24 hours. It could be in 3 days. In some countries, in Asian countries, Japan, Singapore, Iran, they easily go for 8 hours. But it also is possible to have 4 days, each day 6 hours, even more, 6 days, each day 4 hours. And under no circumstances, the lead management should not be left out. So lead management is 100% in. And maybe an instructor or a supervisor would like to have a 3 hours follow-up. That could be optional, but the standard program or number we thought is 24 hours.
Okay, thank you. And finally, group 5.
We think that it should be at least 24 hours because actually the number of hours also depend on the size of the group. Like, for example, if I have 4 people ready for certification, I bring them forward and I get people to train compared to somebody with 12 people for 24 hours. I think so. You actually for the depth of the knowledge, the skills and all that, it actually doesn't depend on the hours only. It also depends on the size of the group. So at least 24 hours. In fact, 24 hours for 15 people in basic is very, very little.
Thank you, Claire. Kim, I see you have your hand up.
I know that this is later on our list, and actually I added it today, but for those people who are saying 27 hours, are you in favor of 3-day trainings, 9 hours a day is the question, because maybe you're not in favor of 3-day trainings at all, which is it's on my list to talk about, but I was just curious when you say a minimum of 27 hours, we know that there's people doing 3-day trainings. Are you in favor of 9 hours a day is just the question that I have. Or maybe
can we put that in chat right now, real quick, what people are thinking? And then Kathy, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just want to make a comment. This is it's an observation. What we're talking about is very trainer focused. Learners are not empty vessels. My suggestion, or I don't want to make work for people, but feedback from the learner is really, really important. Otherwise, we are judging what people can and cannot do, what they do and do not think. And I just think it's would be a valuable resource lost if you don't do some feedback, whether it's via SurveyMonkey, I don't know, whatever you do. But a lot of people studying this are adults with a life and tons of experience.
Thank you so much. Any final comments about this before I hand it back to Kim? Okay, I don't see any hands or hear anything. So Kim, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Pat, for doing that facilitation. We didn't get into obviously everything. We got through 5 of our first things, 5 out of 16, and it might be 17 if we talk about 3 to 4 days. So it seems to me that we're either going to have to increase the length of these meetings to get through the rest next time, or we may have to do 3 different meetings. But either way, the training committee will figure that out. I don't know if anyone has any closing thoughts that you'd like to add, but I appreciate all of your input. This is important, and I think that all of your work in the small groups was important. What I wanted to accomplish today was accomplished as far as getting options for different situations and scenarios that we presented. We started with the easy ones. So I hope that you'll come back next time. We may actually do one in February and then another one in March. I don't know, but we'll let you know. I don't want to space this out every other month like we do other PDs, so that it would take us 6 months to get through this part. I would prefer not to do that. So we'll see how that works, and look for emails coming to you about the next session. I see Juan Pablo has his hand, and Stephen, I'll get to you next, and then Lynn, I see you. Juan Pablo, you first.
Yes, I wanted to thank you all for organizing this. This to me is very important because the instructors and the facilitators or the supervisors have a lot of information about what's going on and what could be done to develop the WGI in the future. So this is great, and thank you for inviting us. And I'm very happy to see new faces as instructors and supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan Pablo. Stephen?
Hi, Kim. Thank you for organizing this too. So the question I have is, we went through a lot of details and all these questions. So I was just looking at the bigger picture, like all these questions, what is it going to serve? Because ultimately, the quality picture cannot, and I think I will say that it cannot be 100% yellow. There's no perfection in this world. It's always a give and take for all systems. Like if people want to have a longer duration of the certification, but want to have overall short-term period of the whole certification process, then there may be points where they are contradicting because they will put it onto the letter. So I was just looking at, when we have all these questions, all these details, what is really the general direction that WGI is really wanting to drive and move forward? And then we can move towards a common goal, a common target, and then we know what are the areas that we need to negotiate and to probably let go, and what are the areas which is a lot more important that we can prioritize and focus.
Well, can I say to you, Stephen, I would like to invite you to be on the training committee for WGI. That's the first thing I want to say. I think you'd be a very good contributor to that particular committee, or anyone else here that is interested in being on the training committee. What I can say about that is our goal right now is to use our colleague Boba from Europe's word, is to harmonize the way that we deliver our training programs worldwide and still allow for variation among different member organizations. So right now we're trying to update the current policy or guidelines, whatever we decide to call it. And so that we can get people on the same page. So there's not all of this difference and that we are delivering a standard product. The ultimate goal and where we're going is more of a competency-based program. It could be to those specific programs we talked about, choice theory for teachers, choice theory for counselors. We're moving in a more exciting direction, but while we're waiting to get there, we didn't want to function with the policy that we currently have because there's some things in there that a lot of people don't agree with and don't understand. And it was done with really the input of only 2 people. So we wanted to do this process the right way and include the stakeholders and get the feedback as we move forward to create this standard policy or guidelines that we are going to use while we're developing the competency-based program. So that's the goal. I don't know if that satisfies your question, but that's where we're at.
I see. I understand where you're going. So I think it's really a lot of MMC companies where they have globalization, but at the same time localization. So it really seems to me that we should or we may have a globalized policy with a localized a global policy with guideline that allows for localization.
Absolutely. That's what we want. That's exactly what we want. Globalization with localization. Absolutely.
So that means at the level of globalization, we are looking at the values. For example, people need to be competent before moving on. And the level of localization, then you go into all the details because different countries have got different education system. I mean, of the denomination of the candidates or the participants that they are coming from.
So are you thinking that the time that we've spent today was in dealing with details that the local MOs would normally be handling? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think there's both aspects. I think we did touch about 2 aspects of it. I think it's very good. It's the first time we are all meeting, and I think to really understand and to hear and to really listen, I think that is the most important. Then we can get a better picture that everybody has. So when everybody inputs their views, then we can see a picture that we can align with, that everybody will at least work towards a common vision or common quality picture.
Yes. Yep. Thank you for that. That's really helpful. Lynn.
Just a last word. I wanted to emphasize that when we were talking about faculty, we meant practicum supervisors and instructors. And so I heard comments that people weren't sure they should be here because they were just a practicum supervisor. And I just want to emphasize, no, the intention was absolutely practicum supervisors and instructors coming together for this. So thank you, those that did show up. If there's others that you think didn't show up because they felt they didn't fit, that was not what we were wanting.
Yeah, and please have them come to the next one to know that they're invited. If they got the invitation, it means that they're listed as current faculty with WGI, either in 2021 or 2022. We haven't listed our 2023 yet. So we went back 2 years and invited all the faculty that we had on our list. And then we sent an invitation to the member organizations in case they had faculty that for some reason weren't on WGI's list. So we wanted to cover it that way. So you may have gotten a few emails about this meeting. I hope that's better than being left out. So we'll organize this again to continue the work. And I just want to thank everyone for your participation. Appreciate you. Thank you. We knew we wouldn't get through all 16 of our points in one day. So, well, we didn't know it, but we highly suspected it. Oh, Ellen, I'm so glad that you got my email. I sent it several days ago and it got stuck in my outbox and I just noticed it this morning and I said, how is it that this didn't go out? So I'm glad you got it. I'm assuming you did because you're here. Hi, Sharon. Hi, Pat. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Yes.
We had a really good turnout this morning. We had 2 screens of people, so that was really good. This is, important stuff as we move into even more important stuff. So I'm glad that a lot of stakeholders in terms of faculty are here to help us craft these changes, knowing that these changes are basically an interim policy as we move towards a fully competence-based learning model. We're not there yet, and knowing how long it takes to reach agreement with an international body is really challenging. So we figured that, but how long it will, and Ellen's laughing because she knows, as she was on the board, she knows it takes a long time. And I think it's worth the time, but the people who are waiting in the trenches for the rollout of the competency-based learning program may feel like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Why is it taking so long? Well, you may get an understanding about why it's taking so long when you hear everybody's differing opinions on this call. And that was one of our goals. So I'm going to stop talking for now because I want to wait till the top of the hour, and then I'll actually give you some information about why we're doing this and what we hope to gain from our meeting today. So let me give a chance for everybody to get in that's coming in. Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Gary.
Oh, hello, people I haven't seen in ages.
Hi, Sharon.
Sharon,
Hello.
Christine, Lucy. Wow.
Hi, Lucy.
Hey,
Hello,
Judith.
everyone.
Hi, Gary.
How are you all?
Gary.
Well,
Hello,
thank
Gary.
Hi.
Wonderful.
Oh.
Happy New Year to
G'day,
everyone.
Christine. Likewise.
Hey, Judith. Nice to see you again.
I'm glad to be here.
Yay.
Yes.
Wow, we're getting Australians. We had them this morning and now they're back in the afternoon. I love it.
You can tell the
It's
difference
7:30 in the
between the
morning
night
here.
people and the morning people by the attendance from Australia. This is the morning group.
This is the morning people. Yep.
Yep.
5 o'clock. I woke up.
Oh, I was up then.
On purpose?
Well, no, not really. That's my wake up time.
Mine too.
I don't always get up then, but that's my wake up time.
Yeah, I usually open my eyes about 5:30, but I definitely don't get up at 5:30. I start working on my phone.
Oh, okay.
Oh my goodness.
Pat, it
All
looks
right,
very
well,
cold out of Pat's window there. Rather chilly out there in the Chicago. Chicago
It
day.
is chilly. That is a fact. But actually, it's kind of mild for us. It's
Okay.
about 40 degrees. I don't know what that translates into Celsius.
Cold.
But 40 degrees is still, it would be cold for anybody living in a tropical climate for
So
sure.
do you have snow at 40 degrees?
Yeah.
Or?
We have
Definitely
had
colder
snow.
than us.
It's melted.
Right, but real disclosure, that's just my winter scene background for my winter time of year, so that nobody has to see my messy house behind me.
Oh,
So I
okay.
don't have to worry about my background when I have a beautiful scene. So, but
Oh, it
we
is
have
lovely.
had winters that look like that, just not this
Okay.
moment.
Oh, that's snow
okay.
on the tree behind you, is it? That's not just a picture.
That's a Zoom background,
Wow.
she's saying.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
We have had
done.
snow.
Well done.
Yeah, we have had snow and it's melted now. Looks kind of like spring.
Last week that could have, or a couple of weeks ago, that could have actually been the view out my windows when we had
Yeah.
Ditto.
the ice.
Yes.
Oh,
us
okay.
too.
had some
That was
snow in
mine. We couldn't
Portland.
get out our doors.
Oh, Sue,
We were
Buffalo
stuck.
was horrible. You were
We
in
made the national
news.
news again.
Oh, yeah, wow.
Yeah, it was bad. It was what it looked like it was, for sure. Hey, Calica.
Hi, Calica.
Hello, Sue. Yay.
Happy New Year.
Hi, Sue.
All right, well, we might as well get started. I just want to start. We've asked Pat Roby to moderate the conversation and discussion. And the main point of this meeting is to get everyone's feedback as well as their rationale for the points in our training policy that had some discrepancies. So we had put out to member organizations, this is the new proposed interim training policy as we're moving towards the competency-based policy. So in the meantime, this is the policy we want to function under. Some changes were made, and there were even some changes made maybe 5 years ago that some instructors didn't know about. So you might be surprised to hear about that. We made a list of 16 points that had some controversy around them. Some of them are simple and should take just a vote in the chat to get the information we need. And others will move into breakout sessions and discuss in small groups. What happened this morning, surprise, surprise, is that we had 16 things and we got through 5. So we're going to try to keep this also 5 because we want to keep the groups at the same pace. Full disclosure, we started a little late this morning, so we didn't actually have the full hour and a half, but I still think that we'll be done before our 90 minutes are up. And we started with the easy things first so that we could ease ourselves into the more controversial items. So just to give you the things that are going to be discussed, I'll just run through them real quick. I'll let you know what the 16 points are. So the first one was, should we issue certificates for practicums? We currently don't, we never have. And then that would mean that we'd have to start keeping track of practicum completion in our database. That's the first thing. Then we also have an application to attend advanced training, and we also have an application to attend certification. And the question we put to the morning group was, should that documentation be completed at the conclusion of practicum or right before they want to go to the training? We'll talk more as we do each of these as to the reasons why on both sides if we have that. Should we call what we're working on a policy document or guidelines for certification training to distinguish between, are we saying this is what it has to be, or are we saying this is a guideline? We want to talk about the minimum length of certification, which of course will be irrelevant once we move to competencies, but for right now, there's some discrepancies there. Also, the minimum hours that intensive training should be, it used to be 27 hours. And then some people started doing 3-day trainings. And when they were doing 3-day trainings, the policy said you only had to do 21 hours. So we wanted to talk about that. And then the 5th item was oh, no, that was the 5th item. Yeah. Our current policy says you have to be 21 to take a basic training. We have a proposal to change that. What should the minimum number be for a group at basic, advanced, or certification minimum? Used to be, we said 6, but about 5 or 6 years ago, it was changed to only 1. And there was a lot of pushback on that. So we want to talk about that. How many hours of a 30-hour practicum should be face-to-face? Could the first day of a basic intensive training be open to the public? Currently, our policy said it should be, and that was so that Glasser could come in and speak the first day. And is 30 days enough notice for announcing an upcoming training? Because our policy says 30 days, but we're thinking maybe 60 would be better. And should the certificate given at certification say an overall choice theory certificate, CTRT, or should it say CTRT-LM? Should we allow for Zoom synchronistic training as an approved delivery method since COVID, the danger of COVID has lessened? And what about an asynchronistic hybrid training with some of the training being online without an instructor and 8 hours minimum of role play with a certified instructor in real time online? And then we were looking at 3 different faculty members for training. And while the current policy says that you need to, well, it recommends that you have 5 different faculty members for the 5 different phases of certification. But then it says that it's required that you have different faculty for each of the 3 intensive pieces. So your basic intensive, your advanced intensive, and your cert instructor have to be different, but you might have one instructor that does one of those as well as your 2 practicums. So the new policy proposes that, yes, in fact, you do have 3 different people, but it's just that those 3 people need to do 3 different pieces. So you could have one person do basic intensive, basic practicum, and advanced intensive, as long as advanced practicum and cert were different. So that is that's on the agenda, but we probably won't get to that today, just so you know what we're looking at. And then how many people should we cap certification to be? It used to be 10 when Glasser was coming in and doing role plays, and Bob Golding was doing role plays. That took up time in the week. So we were playing with the numbers. And when we had a certification in Las Vegas, we had Bruce Allen do a certification training with 14 people. And he said he had enough time to do it, but it was tight. So we have 10, 12, and 14 as an option, as the maximum for certification. So our goals for this meeting are twofold. First of all, we're hoping that all of our faculty will be able to understand the complexity and the diversity of people's opinions around a lot of these issues. And the second thing is, we don't intend to make decisions today. Our goal is to provide at least 3 choices that we will put in a SurveyMonkey survey and send out to all of our faculty members to vote on, and then the training committee will put together the actual official policy. So what we hope to gain is, if we talk about a particular topic, we end up with at least 3 options that we can put in the SurveyMonkey survey. So we're not going to duke it out today and decide, which one is the right answer, because probably what we're going to find is there is no right answer. And we had a lovely gentleman on the call this morning who was from Singapore, who brought up 2 words that I thought were really good to think about. And his words were globalization and localization. And he said, and explained it perfectly, in my opinion, that WGI, the international body, wants to provide guidelines or a policy, whatever we decide it's going to be, for a globalized general parameters for the certification program, if you will, but that local MOs will be able to decide how to roll it out in their particular area. So it's not going to be prescriptive from WGI, but we are going to have guidelines and parameters for the MOs to follow, and then you can decide how you're going to roll that out. So before we start with the first one, anybody have any questions before we start with that?
Kim, I'm wondering, what I have seen in print now has been the certification process. I haven't seen in print the faculty process that the email had said was being worked on, but we don't have that yet.
We're not doing faculty process yet. No, we're just doing certification.
Okay.
Yeah. One of the things that was discussed this morning that's interesting and also important, I think, is to think about possibly, as we do competency training, that we create competency for a training for educators, a training for counselors, and a training for management. And one of the reasons for that is simple. Google. People are searching for training for their specific job title. Generalized training doesn't really get a lot of people interested because they can't find it. So that's one thing that we talked about. And if we do that, that would have a big impact on our faculty training, I would think. So we haven't tackled that yet. Go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, just
And
to
then
keep this
Judith, I'm
group-
sorry.
Yeah, I'll just add on this point, and then Judith, I know it's you. The other thing that came up is when we looked at the number of hours that a training should be, people said, well, if it's just a group of teachers, it's, you know, they're coming from a perspective, it's different than if you're trying to help, say, a mom and a psychiatrist and everything in between, you know, be ready for certification. It's very different. So that issue of if we had some specialized training and focused training might really help as we address this issue of length of training hours and so on.
Right. Thanks, Lynn. And Judith.
So I was just thinking, did I miss an email that sent out these 16 points?
No.
No, we didn't send
Okay.
this points ahead of time, but we
I'm
did. put
trying,
the
I did
policy.
not try and write them all down, and I'm like,
No, you don't need to. We won't be covering all 16 today. And what we'll do is prior to the next time, we'll send out a list, so you'll have it.
thank you.
We
Thank
didn't do it this time. But we did send out the proposed training policy. That's been on the WGI website in draft form now for several months. And we got feedback from some people, and that's what these points are based on, is the feedback we got in the differences of how people are doing things or how they think they should be done. I would also like to take the opportunity first to say that this is coming from the training committee of WGI, who is currently in this meeting represented by Lynn Samita and myself. We have some other people on the training committee, Sonia Munoz from Colombia and Ali Sahibi from Australia/Iran. He spends 6 months of the year in both of those places. And we invited Dr. Pat Roby to be here as the facilitator to facilitate the conversations after you come out of your small groups. I'll be setting up what the points are and what the considerations are for you to think about. And then when we come back from small group meetings, Pat will then facilitate that conversation so that Lynn and I can just participate as faculty members is really why we did that. Pat, you have your hand up.
I do, and I just was actually going to address that. One of the things that we did this morning, Kim, you might remember, is that there were some questions that you would just ask, and then we asked the participants to respond in the chat. And
Yep.
then other things that we will be stepping out to do small group discussion. And my job really is just to keep things moving along so that we accomplish as much as possible. So we're going to be asking one person in the group to take the leadership role and then come back and report on what happens in your small group meeting. So I just wanted to mention that as the process overall before we begin.
Yeah, thank you. So the first question is something that we can just respond in the chat. If we get any negative, as in, no, I don't think this is the right thing, then we'll put it on the SurveyMonkey chat. We had full agreement in the morning session, but if there's someone who disagrees, that's fine. We'll hear what you have to say and the reason why. But the first one is, should we issue certificates for practicums for people? And then keep track of that in our database. If you could just put in the chat yes or no, that would be great. Okay. As you are continuing that, I'll start talking about the next piece because it is, oh, I see a no. So let me go to Lucy and just hear your reasoning as to why you wouldn't want to do that.
I don't have any reason to do it, so I voted no.
Okay, so I didn't speak to the pain point, which is something I promised I would do. So let me do that so that you know why we're thinking about this. I don't know if anybody has ever had a person who took training a while ago. When I say a while ago, couple of years up to a decade ago, and they did their practicum with you and they're ready to go on to certification or advanced training and they ask for your co-verification. I don't know about you, Lucy, but I may not remember. And it doesn't feel like I can do an accurate co-verification because there's been a lot of time that has passed. And some people did say that what they would do in that case is spend maybe a day with that person or a few hours with that person, talking to them and catching up. But that's a whole different thing about the certificates. They come back, they want to know the dates. You may not have the dates. I've even had people come to me to say, I'm ready to do advanced training or certification, but my practicum supervisor passed away 6 years ago. So they can't co-verify or even say that they actually took a practicum. We have no record of that at all. So that's kind of the pain point. Yes, Sue.
Well, Sharon and I are finding, as for GIFT, we're working as training coordinators. And as we were looking at the training process going on, we were finding we just had people lost. They were just lost in the shuffle, and the same things were happening. Somebody's looking for an advanced training and they had not ever finished practicum. And they didn't know, people just may or may not know where they are in the process. And we had no way, or who did what. Or they really have they really had no idea. Some of it was time-based, but some of it was just well, I don't know. I know I did, and I know I read, and I know we did that role play stuff, they don't know the process, So some of it we wanted, and we've now been reaching out to GIFT instructors and practicum supervisors to asking them for the group. So we're trying to establish a database. Because we've just had people that are just lost, people actually wanting to go to certification, people wanting to become faculty, and they haven't been certified yet. They just really are not sure where they are. So
that was the rationale, Lucy, for if you issued a certificate, then everybody would have that. And they'd be able to say, I finished the practicum in this year, etc.
And it would be in the database as well. So we would be able to go to the database and see that. Yes,
we like the database idea more than we were concerned about the actual certificate. But
well,
sorry,
Terry, I saw your hand.
We in Australia we issue one through Laser Australia anyway, so someone has to that's the process, and so it is recorded on a database. We had an instance where someone wanted to move from Australia and do the certification at in United States, and that was awkward because that person hadn't finished their advanced practicum to the requirements of their instructor. So I just think it formalizes the process and keeps everybody accountable to what's going on.
Yeah, I remember that situation. Kalika, I see your hand.
This is a worldwide organization now, so from a worldwide perspective, it benefits the organization to have accurate records. It benefits also to be able to market the amount of training that people have done all over the world and the different stages. So there's a whole lot of reasons looking from a worldwide strategic viewpoint that it's useful to have all that documented.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for that. Lucy, are you still in no? Just checking.
I don't care.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. The next thing is highly connected to this, and it has to do with that application to attend advanced training and then an application to attend certification. Not all MOs use this form that I'm aware of. We have the form. We ask people who are going to an advanced training to complete this application and getting ready to go to certification to complete this application. When that happens, it's usually when they're registering for the new training. They'll get this application to complete. And then that application goes to the member organization who sends it to whoever the instructor of record is for the advanced training or the certification. And it lists things on there like who were their prior trainers, what were the dates of their training. And then we ask the individual to self-evaluate whether they, what their strengths are and what they want to work on during the next phase of training. And for certification, it talks about what is their presentation going to be about. And then there's a space for their practicum supervisor, either basic or advanced, to co-verify what they've said and to add their input. So it has come up that some people say they like the way we do it now, where it's mailed out to people when they're just about to do their next stage. Other people are saying it would make more sense, or it would make sense to complete those forms at the end of practicum while it's fresh in everybody's mind, including practicum supervisor. And other people have said, maybe this whole form isn't even needed. And maybe what we need is just a self-evaluation form that would go to the person, the trainer of record who's going to be doing the next step of the training. So that we weren't able to do a really quick, let's do a quick, went to small groups and we gave people 10 minutes. I'm going to do groups of 3, I think, in this group. We'll do groups of 3, and you'll be able to each get a turn to talk about it, but you only have 5 minutes. So I know we're choice theory people and highly value relationships. So when you get in there, you're going to want to talk to each other and maybe spend 4 minutes on that, and then 1 minute quickly sharing your responses. So in the earlier group, I gave, I think, an extra minute or 2 just because I knew you were going to need it. So we can do that again, but I'm saying 5 minutes now. We're doing random assignments into groups. So if whoever you're with in the first group, you'll be with different people in the second group. Probably you could end up with the same people, but it's not too likely. And when you get into your group, you need to designate person that will report back. And we don't necessarily want to hear from every single group if your feedback is the same as what's already been given, because we're trying to prioritize time here. We want to hear everyone's points. So if you have some points that are different than what's already been said, then we definitely want to hear from you, but you don't need to repeat what's already been said. I will bring you back from your groups, meaning I'll close the rooms 1 minute, 60 seconds before I need you back. So you'll have a minute to wrap up your conversation. And if you're still talking, if you've been in Zoom breakout rooms, you'll know that it's like the Starship Enterprise, and you'll be beamed back into this big room, whether you want to or not, no choice. Zoom is not a choice theory organization. We can bring you back kicking and screaming, but we're going to bring you back. So anybody have questions before we do that? And then Pat will process whatever has happened in the small groups. Any questions before we move? Yes, Lynn.
So I think just because it happened this morning, could you just restate the real issue we're addressing?
Right, the pain point as it was, we were asked for the pain point. So the pain point is we have this form that some people are requiring, some people aren't. It's in our policy as a requirement that these forms are completed, and our policy currently says that they're done prior to registration at the next level. The pain point is for instructors, practicum supervisors who have to try to remember this person and be able to give accurate co-verification for whatever the person has self-evaluated, and they may not remember. So that's the pain point. And also to see if there's standardization, if we can get standardization across member organizations, everybody using the form, not using the form, or if we could simplify the form and just collect the information that we really think is important. So those are the 3 options, and we will put that in a SurveyMonkey survey for our next phase after this.
So let me just read the question. Should the application to attend the next level be completed at the end of practicum? That's the question. That kind of guides the discussion in addition to what Kim was saying.
Yeah.
So just a point of clarification. I know where we have moved to online forms whenever possible. So whenever this form is completed, does it go into the member organization's database? Or is that the instructor participant's responsibility to keep it?
MOs do it differently. It does not usually get saved at the MO level that I'm aware of, but it could be saved at the MO level. It usually goes to the MO and the MO distributes to the instructor of record.
Okay.
And then whatever that instructor does, it's not part of the person's file, if you will, training record or anything like that. That's just, it's really for the new instructor to get to know their people before the training starts.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome. I'm just trying to do the math and think how many people I need in breakout rooms. Okay, got it. All right, so I'll see you when we return.
Let's go to the feedback from the group. So again, the question was, should the application to attend the next level be completed at the end of a practicum? So that was the question. So what I want to do is I'll just start with group number 1 and we'll go right along, and the person who's the reporter will give us your information. Again, don't repeat something that's been said already. So let's start with group 1. Who's the spokesperson for that group?
I think I didn't really take notice, but I think we're group 1.
Yeah, okay.
Gary from Australia. The idea of completing at the end of practicum or basic week, we agree with that. And the idea came up of a booklet. So if you've got 5 levels of training, 1 page for each level of training.
Interesting.
That is developed by the global organisation and distributed to the member organisation, so that there is a template, a common template right across globally. And the other point, co-verification. If it's signed off by a faculty member, that should occur at each level of training too, so that when you look at it as a person taking on someone in training, you see that it's been signed off by the participant or the applicant, but also by a member of faculty. And that faculty is very important, because if they have signed off on it, then it is a co-verification. It's an acknowledgement they're ready to go to the next level of training. I'll call that the summary.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Let's go to group number 2.
I don't know what our number was.
Two.
That's us. Yeah, we were number
We're
2.
2.
Yeah.
All
Sue,
right.
are you going to say?
Yeah, so who's speaking for group number 2?
Sue.
I think
Christine?
Sue is, yeah.
There's 2 Sues. Is it me, Sue?
Yeah, you, Sue.
Yeah.
Yep.
Me, Sue.
It's
Okay.
Christine, Calica, and Sue.
Oh,
That's group
Okay.
2.
Sorry.
Sorry,
I don't think
Kim.
any of us
Oh,
paid
God.
attention to what the
The
number was.
number.
Yes, we agreed with we liked the idea of it being after practicum. We went into the WGI site and we found the actual form, and we liked the form. We did have the conversation about the self-evaluation that's already included in it, and like that, as well as the other data that was in there. We did have just the beginnings of a conversation that, as a global organization, is probably not something for us to consider, and had the conversation about in American and Australia, it might be nice to add as well that, are there any things about the training that you want to make sure happens? Are there any things about the training you want to make sure, any activities that you'd rather not see happen? What's your idea of group? The things that the instructor would do at the beginning of a group anyway, but that's not globally acceptable. Like, it's not something that fits in every culture. So basically, to answer the question, we said, yes, we like it.
Thank you, Sue. Kim, who was in group 3?
Betty, Lucy, and Sue Berry.
That's me.
Okay, so who's going to speak for that group?
Yes, I will, but we we discussed it and came up with a difference. It was Lucy and Betty from Ireland. Ireland and Australia, we felt that we had the essence of it covered in the evaluation forms that we do at the end of our practicums, except for I think we need to retain the application for certification. So no definitive answer. Lucy said was identifying a different culture within America, I think, where it was things were done in a more individual fashion, didn't have such a structure, whereas we in Australia have a fairly strong structure with paperwork and that sort of stuff. So I guess 2 in favour, 1 not in favour, but that it be perhaps up to MOs, I don't know, I think perhaps to design their own. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. And where are we at? Group number 4?
With group number 4, we decided, yes, that the application to attend certification week should be completed at the end of the advanced practicum. And we do not have anything new to add that hasn't already been said.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Mhm.
Okay, and so group number 5.
There's only 4.
Oh, there's only 4 this time. Oh, all right. We had 5 this morning. All right. So is there anybody who, did we miss anything that you want to be sure we're saying about this right now? Otherwise, we'll move to our next question.
Just a quick point, that recording of this information is the individual, the participant, but also the member organisation. That there wasn't a need to be for this information necessarily to be kept on a global level.
Right.
I have one question, and that is, why would you do an application for certification week for someone who's not going to choose to go?
Well, if they know for sure that they're not going to go, that's one thing. But I can tell you that my son told me he wasn't going to go to college, and 3 years later he went to college. So, you know, and it just is stressful. I'll speak for myself. It's very difficult for me to try to give quality feedback on a form of somebody that I worked with 3 years prior. It's just hard. And I've had people come back to me 10 years later, and it's almost impossible. So that's just me. It may only be me, but
I would agree. I think that I think again what we said was that the difference between the way it's been done in the States and the other countries where it's very, very structured makes this 2 different questions. Or that's just my view of it.
So what would those 2 questions be, Lucy?
One is, do we need it at all? And the other would be, does this match and fit into the structure that we have?
Okay. All right. I saw Lynn and then I saw Calica. Pat, just for your information.
Just to speak to Lucy's point, because somebody completes the application doesn't mean they're actually going to go ahead for sure and do it. There's always, I mean, we know circumstances come up, things come up, finances, challenges. So the application doesn't really go anywhere unless the person decides to actually act on it.
Yeah, it just moves to being systematic rather than personal choice when you get everybody to do it, whether you're going to use it or not. It's saying, we need you to do certification so we can have money in the coffer kind of thing.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying.
I think the point is the quality of the comments.
Right. And Calica had her hand up.
So I think if you're looking at it as a final form of evaluation, self-evaluation by the person as readiness, rather than, you know, the rule is you've got to go on. I don't think it's anything to do with that. I do think it's good information to have who all your trainers are, and I think that's good for the MO. And I actually, even though it's a lot of paperwork, think it's good for WGI because you're building a connected faculty this way. The other thing was even just the feedback form for, when they fill in the form at the end of the BIT is astonishing, the self-evaluation. It's astonishing whether they're going to go on or not. If there's a question on the form, are you interested in continuing? But the self-evaluation is often astonishing and not what you're expecting. And that's good information.
I like the idea of what you said, Calic, about possibly renaming the form from application to attend to readiness to attend. And then it makes sense to do for everyone. You're ready if and when you ever decide you want to. I like that. Okay. So the next question, the minimum length from basic intensive to certification. When I became an instructor, that minimum length was 18 months, but in essence, it was really 17 months because the policy and procedure manual said you could count the first month and the last month. So that actually made it 17. And then Linda Harshman would sometimes give approval for 16 months if the person had done a lot and they were advanced. So we had an update to the training policy, probably, I'm guessing when I say 5 years ago, but it was something like that, that was updated by 2 instructors. And they made some changes, mainly because there were many MOs who were struggling with getting the numbers for training. So one of the things that they changed was the minimum length. They moved it from 18 months to 12 months because theoretically people could take a basic training, do a 6-month practicum, take an advanced training, do a 6-month practicum, and do certification in 1 month's time. Well, 1 year's time, rather, 1 year plus 1 week. So that was changed to 12 months. So our current policy says 12. We could go back to 18, or we could increase it to 24. We have some member organizations like Kuwait, for example, who would like to shorten the certification process. The words that I've been hearing is you could become a pilot or a brain surgeon in less time than it takes you to become a faculty member for WGI. So that seems a little ridiculous when you put it in that kind of thinking. But also I know that there's people who are really feel that the internalization of the concepts are what is most important, and that can't happen in a short period of time, or it tends not to happen in a short period of time. So we would like for you to think about, remember, this is the minimum length. You can add whatever you want to the length as an MO, but we're looking at what the minimum length can be when you're going through certification. So when you go to your breakout rooms, you'll be talking about 12 months, 18 months, or 24 months, and know that when we move into a fully competence-based model, length of time is not going to matter. People can come in and be able to demonstrate competence and maybe skip some steps. People it may take them 12 years to finish amassing the competencies. But for right now, remember, this is just an interim policy that we want to work with while we're creating that competence-based model. So 12 months, 18 months, or 24 months in the meantime is what we're looking at. So any questions before we break into different rooms?
Sorry, do we have any data? Do we have any data that's telling us that the 12 months has worked or hasn't worked? The 18 months worked or didn't work? Or
I don't have data about that, because what I really believe is you'd have to be in a very fully functioning MO to get your training done in 12 months, because we just don't have a basic training abutted by a basic practicum with an advanced training the very next week. It's almost, I would think it's practically impossible to get it done in 12 months based on scheduling alone.
Okay.
So I don't have data.
So even though that was the minimum, we don't seem to have any record that people have accomplished it in 12 months.
Right.
But
okay,
to
so
me,
that's
I would say though that that's what we're looking for, is what is the minimum, whether it's been done in the past or not. We start there, because if we say that the minimum is 16 months or 18 months, now we're creating something else. So we want to keep that just in case somebody is able to do it, so that's the big picture about what could happen. And
Good
they
point,
can
Pat.
always be more than that, but this is our starting point.
I could just tell you an anecdotal story. I once worked with a woman who was in business, and she was so gung-ho choice theory, and she was using it in her consulting work, and she got to advanced practicum and wanted to go to certification, and it would have been a 15-month process, and it wasn't approved, and she just dropped it. She never got certified, and she just stopped. So if we say 12 months, what we're saying is we won't use that time frame to keep people who are ready from going forward. That's really what the 12 months would be. And certainly you can make it more if you want to, but that is one of the things to consider. And that's just one person, but it stuck with me because I thought she may have gone on to be an instructor and be someone that really amassed some interest in the business world with choice theory. And it just didn't happen because of 1 month, just 1 month.
Could I just add one more piece? One of the things we've struggled on the training committee is how people use this information. And so it is a concern if people use, oh, I only have to do 12 hours for practicum.
Right.
So that's all they do. Or if 12, months is the minimum. So I should be able to get through in 12 months. So that's a little bit of the other side that kind of gives us pause for thought.
Oh, it's true, Lynn. That's really interesting because I once had a person who had done a basic training that wanted me to do a practicum in 3 consecutive days because it would get the 18 hours done, but it doesn't accomplish the spread out over time integration. That is the thought. So yeah, that is an interesting point that we don't have on our list that maybe we should.
I wonder though also if what we don't seem to have in there, and maybe this should be discussed later, is here's the minimum, but here's what we're recommending. We're recommending at least because something of that sort.
We could do that as we're going to a competency-based program.
Then it won't matter.
Things will start to sort itself out. So anyway,
good point, Pam.
Are we ready to shift?
Sue's been raising her hand.
I did have just a quick anecdote that I have from my 6 years of training officer in Australia. We had a large group of people move through to faculty training and to be instructors now over the last 6 years. There were 2 people in that group who we did certification within about 14 months of their basic intensive. They're the only 2 that didn't get through. I just wanted to say that they gave up. They were very challenged in their certification section and didn't continue with the big plan. So I guess in the back of my mind, 12 months is a bit short. And actually in my 6 years, I didn't realise it was 12 months. We just gave them permission. So yeah, so that's just a different perspective, that's all.
Okay, so I mixed you up. You'll have different groups and I'm going to open it up and we'll bring you back. This one we gave people 10 minutes to talk about. So I'll bring you back in 10.
Back. So just like we did before, I'm going to ask you to give me your answer to the question. And the question that we were talking about was, what minimum length should the certification process be? 12, 18, 24 months? Question mark. So let's start again with group 1, which may be different than the group 1 was last time.
Okay, let me tell you who they were. Group 1 was Betty, Ellen, Lucy, and Lynn.
And I've been nominated by default.
Good
Just want to say, I tried really hard not to be.
She did try
Good job.
So we don't have a definitive answer for you, but here's what we discussed, which is one of the observations is with 18 months as the minimum, what some of us have noticed as faculty is then people are saying, well, it's going to be just 16, is that close enough? And so there's a shaving down sometimes. And the question was posed, so if we said 12 months, is it going to be 11, 10? Is 9 close enough? So that question was raised by someone. In Ireland, they talked about 24 months as the maximum, but we didn't get a sense of what the minimum would be. And another comment was, if we're on the road towards competency, perhaps we should just leave it the way it is rather than change it and then see it all change again as we're moving towards a different whole format. So those are our thoughts.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, group 2, Kim, is?
Judith Kalagamurti and Sue Tomaszewski.
Marta, you want to talk for us this time? Please.
We recognize that we're controlling competency by time at the moment. So that's an issue. Because I looked at the world perspective. So if we look at the world perspective, I would personally have concerns about rushing the process. But I understand that lots of MOC in Iran are under great pressure. So we agreed with 18 months. However, we understand that there can be a process of waivering this with either the permission of the MO and the permission of WGI if somebody is, you know, already self-aware, internally motivated and all that sort of stuff.
Okay, thank you so much. Now we'll go to group number 3.
Ashby, Sharon Carter-Jackson, and Sue Berry.
Okay, so I'm it this time. We had an interesting discussion. Sue, due to her experiences, really feels that we need to leave it at 18 until competencies is established. Where there was some preference to doing 12, especially maybe in like a closed group where it was a school where people were using the choice theory Glasser quality school model where they were enmeshed in it on a day-to-day basis, that staff might train faster. Also, summers are more easy for teachers to attend, and a year might accommodate that with a January training in the middle. But overall, you know, basically we want to look at it, you know, see what competency brings, and then, you know, work between the 12 and 18 months.
We didn't like 24 at all.
No, no 24.
Okay, thank you. And finally, the last group, number 4.
That was me. That was me, Pat. Yep. So I wrote down the number this time. We were okay with 12 months because we felt that if someone was really enthusiastic and did want to do it in 12 months, we shouldn't keep them back. And, you know, then maybe something about a training calendar that so people knew that if the training wasn't available here, then it could be available via Zoom somewhere else. And we also talked about the competency stuff. Once competency is there, this will be a moot point, really. And I also thought about if it was a shorter time, then I thought it would be important to have a variety of instructors. That might be when it's more relevant.
Okay, thank you.
And
So,
Pat,
yes.
could I interrupt for 1 minute? Because I think it's important to hear Gary's point. So I'd like to invite him to share his point about trust that he brought up.
Trust. Yeah.
To sum it up, I've practiced for a long time that when co-verification happens and someone comes to my training, that the person is ready to complete that training because a faculty member has co-verified with them. And one of the issues I think we have to tackle as an organisation is 12 months is fine. If somebody wants to be passionate about it, we have to acknowledge that. But at the end of the day, we have to put a lot of faith, trust in the people who are doing the co-verification, that they're actually doing their job as the person moves through the training. And therefore that raises the issue that maybe there needs to be some sort of co-verification, for example, every 5 years for faculty to make sure that they are remaining competent with the ideas that I qualified as a senior instructor 14 or 15 years ago. All right. So that's the summary. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Is there anybody else who has one thing that wasn't presented to this group right now? Otherwise, we'll move into the next question.
This is just an oddity to go from when Kim was talking about, or as we're talking about time, that you can become a pilot in less time. I was just curious and I went online. The initial training for a pilot is 250 hours of flight time, by the by. And then they need 1,500 hours of airline hiring is their minimum. And then they have to be recertified on a continuous basis. So who's ever giving you the information, tell them, not really. Which also goes along with what Gary's saying.
Or don't fly with them.
We don't get recertified. You know, we don't get recertified. People do, but then people don't.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
So that's a really interesting point.
Well, I was getting ready to buy a new car because I wasn't going to fly anymore. So I'm glad to know. Sharon.
I think the point that Gary made was a good point, but I know that we have always looked at faculty attendance at conferences, trainings, speaking, listening as ways of co-verifying that you are updating and staying current.
Yes, that is on our matrix.
Right. So, I mean, we do have that at least, that we look at that as a point to help.
Ellen, did you have your hand up? You're muted.
So rare that I'm muted.
Who would have thought ever?
Zoom has got choice.
The piece that I want us to pay attention to too is that we talk about timing. We also talk, the other part that we also say is you have to have a whole bunch of instructors. Those two are hugely impactful one on the other. And I think we need that with the tools that we have at our disposal, there's got to be other ways besides you have to have a practicum, different person for all 30 hours of your practicum. What if we can bring in somebody to do a couple of role plays? That means you've had a different experience with role plays with somebody else, etc. So we could all, I could have a practicum where half of you join in for maybe just an hour or two each, but that means there's been a variety.
I like that.
But not at huge expense to everybody, or not also, this is it for me, I gather the people around, they're glad to have me because we get along really, really well. And then I say to them, you have to go find somebody else. See ya.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people we've lost over the years because of exactly that policy. There's something really wrong. It's not helping us spread it. And so that's my caveat.
Thank you so much. I think those are such good points. And so I don't see anybody else with your hand up. So
sorry, Pat.
Except Lynn. I see Lynn.
only because I know the agenda, Ellen, that issue is on the agenda further down the list.
Cool.
Of the number of instructors. So I wanted you to know it was not being ignored.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
We're just not going to get to it today.
All right.
That's so you come back.
At my age, I'm here today.
We're going to call it a cliffhanger and leave it till next month. But the next one is something we can write in the chat. And it's just simply, should we call this the WGI certification training policy, the WGI certification training guidelines? So if you could just write in the chat guidelines or policy, I'll be happy with that.
Oh, I may need time to think. Yeah.
You have about 30 seconds.
I know.
Do you want to give the backdrop, Kim, of why it even came up?
Sure. So when we became an umbrella organization, we decided that WGI did not want to be this autocratic organization that was telling MOs what they should do. That was important to us. So we shifted a lot of what we did to guidelines rather than policy. But we also have some MOs in our ranks who are looking specifically to WGI to be providing policies. They want to know, they don't want it to be so loosey-goosey. So we're kind of, looking for whether this particular piece on certification training should be a policy or a guideline?
I take great offense at loosey goosey.
I'm so sorry, Lucy. I know a lot of my friends named Karen are struggling with their names right now, so I can understand that. Okay, terrific. Okay, so we have one more thing to break out into sessions over, and this is again going to be irrelevant once we have competencies, but I haven't said this with this group, but it's important to understand how long I think, my own personal opinion, that developing a competency-based training policy is going to take with an international organization. It may go faster than I think, and I hope that it will, but I think that this policy may be in effect longer than you know, because right now we don't even really agree in the training policy about what competency-based training looks like. So we're gonna spend a lot of time doing things like this to try to get feedback from our faculty to see what that'll look like. So the next thing that we're looking at is, what should the minimum hours of intensive training be? And this has a long history, so give me a minute to share that. At some point in the United States, it was determined that you could do a 3-day basic training or a 4-day basic training. And it was for the same amount of money, you got the same certificate, and a 3-day training was supposed to be 21 hours minimum, and a 4-day training was supposed to be 27 hours minimum. Prior to that, all trainings were 27 hours, all intensive trainings were 27 hours. So that created a problem because people would call me as the executive director and ask me questions about, okay, so I can do this in 3 days and 21 hours for $500, and I can do it in 4 days, 27 hours for $500, get the same certificate. And I had to try to explain why that was, and it didn't make any sense to me. So the last time that the policy got updated, they changed the minimum hours to 24. And they said, if you're doing a 3-day training, you have to do 8 hours in a day, which we know in the United States, the research shows if you do more than 6 hours with the US audience, your last 2 hours are wasted. We're not retaining any of that.
Add Australia to that.
I think Australia, yes, could be added to that as well. But then we have other MOs, mainly in Asia and the Middle East, who think nothing of doing 9, 10-hour training days, and people stay attentive and learn through that whole entire process. So there's cultural difference here. So three-day training, and one of the things we have listed at the bottom is, should we have 3- and 4-day trainings? Is that important? So we're not there yet. We're looking at what should the minimum length of training be, regardless of whether you're doing a 3-day or a 4-day. But if you say 27 hours, know that that means a 9-hour day for people who are doing 3-day trainings. So just have that conversation. If you want to dip into, should there be 3-day trainings or only 4-day trainings, you can do that. We talked a little bit this morning about how training can be broken up, and we have that in our policy as well, that you can do over a school year. You can have 4 days of a basic training spread out over a school year during PD days. You can do 2 days 1 week and 2 days the next week or the week following. So there's already ways to break it up. But the idea is, how much should the minimum be? So we list 21, 24, 27, just to use numbers that have been used before. So that's the question for the breakout session. And we're going to give you 10 minutes again. We're going to go maybe a couple minutes over the bottom of the hour. I hope that works for people by the time we come back and do a little processing.
Was there ever 24? I can remember doing 24 hours in like 3 8-hour days.
It's 24 now. That's what our current policy says. It's 24 now.
Okay,
And we
that's-
changed
yeah,
that
okay.
maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, okay.
So yes, that's what it says now, 24.
Well, once again, welcome back. And thanks for hanging in there a little bit longer so we can talk about this. So our question is, what minimum hours should intensive training be? It used to be 27, it's currently 24. whether it is 3 or 4 days. So we'll do with the same process we've done before. We'll start with group 1. Kim, who was that?
Well, I reconfigured the groups, but I think they didn't reconfigure. Were you
Yeah,
with
we
the
did.
same?
We
Yeah,
did.
they did.
We did.
Okay.
It was Ellen is group 1, Ellen Ashby, Calica, and Lynn.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
Ellen,
so,
yep.
Ellen, I'm actually, yeah, I'm going to do it. I think the consensus is not less than 24. If anything more, especially with online, I think several people talked about 9 times 3 is definitely like 9 times 3 hour sessions. So there were obviously 27. Lynn has suggested that she's even done more. We're looking at competencies our training needs to be about competencies and content. Calica said, just because we shorten it, people leave stuff out. We can't leave stuff out. It's important that we make sure we do it, get it in. Don't leave anything out. That ongoing currency is important. So we were going back to what Gary was saying. That there was a difference maybe culturally at early level training in providing information versus really focusing on competency. So even whether it was a basic week or an advanced week or certification, competency was always the issue, not just information. I think that's it. Anything else that I left out? Anybody in my group?
We'll have a chance at the end to also add to if there's more that something is missed. So let's move on to group number 2.
Okay, I'm the spokesperson for group 2. So we had 2 conversations going, one strictly on the hours. So we said a minimum of 21 hours, 21 to 24 face-to-face, 27 online. And we also looked at that it depends in terms of the number of people. If you're doing a small group of 3 versus a group of 10, 12, how many hours? Because a small group of 3, you can do the 21 to 24 and do a quality job. 10 to 12, none of us were leaping up and down saying we would be able to provide our very best training in 21 hours or 24 hours to 10 to 12 people.
Okay, thank you. Group number 3.
Sharon, you want to go?
Sure. Okay. We kind of bounced around all over, but we came up with 24 minimum training and looking at that's without breaks. Lunch and breaks are on top of that, type thing. If we're doing 6-hour days type thing. Otherwise, and we preferred 27 possibly for more work at competencies, not just getting out the information. That was one of the issues we were concerned about. Shorter time, you can get the information out, but how much time have you had to help people internalize the concepts and make them their own?
Okay, thank you. And we have one more group, yes?
Yeah, group, group 4 or group 1 or whatever. We also thought 24 hours was a good measure, right? But taking it a bit further, I mentioned if you think about the quality world, then the international organisation needs to have a very clear picture, a quality world picture of what it thinks is the standardisation of the training. For instance, 24 hours, all right? That becomes policy. Policy is an absolute, all right? But that's the quality world picture of the international organisation. At the member organisation level, they also have a quality world picture. And what they need to be able to do is to adapt to their local conditions, small groups, people who want to do it intensively over 3 days because they can focus for 9 hours a day. And at that level, they also have a second picture they look at, which is they're a part of the international organisation. So the member organisation is always saying and asking itself, are we consistent with what the policy is at the international organisation? For instance, 24 hours. But then they have flexibility to be able to adapt to their local circumstances. We want to do it in 3 days. We can do that because we can fit within the policy of the organisation. We want to do it in 21 hours. It caters for everyone. And instead of trying to put responsibility in the international organisation, they have a global policy, but then they allow for adaptation at the member organisation level.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Was there anything that anybody wanted to add that we haven't covered already?
In our group, people felt that they liked the idea of being exposed to more than one person. Yeah, and in particular the tutor, and that if somebody, or if somebody had missed or they couldn't do some time and they were short time, that they could, join another group and get a different experience. I think that was the one.
Thank you, Betty. Anyone else? Lynn?
Yeah, I'd like just to share a point. Kalika and I both have done online training, and we spoke about the incredible growth when it was spaced out. And people were practicing the ideas in between the modules of, be it the basic intensive or the practicum. So just wanted that on record that even the 2 weekends or 2 weekends over within a month, whatever, even that I saw tremendous difference with what people practiced and asked and integrated. Just would like that footnoted.
Thank you, Lynn. Last call. Okay, Kim, turn it back to you.
Okay, so the first thing, on behalf of the training committee, we just would like to thank everyone here, everyone here for spending their time, sharing their knowledge, their expertise, their opinions about all of these points. We know we have many more points to cover, and what I said this morning is we will probably, rather than draw that out to every other month like we have been doing, we might schedule a session for February and a session for March to make that happen. And then I haven't even talked to Lynn about this, but my thought was that we could do the SurveyMonkey survey for the 5 items that we already covered, so that we're not waiting to do everything all at once and several months have gone by and people might not remember. I just read the chat from Kalika. Yes, we have it. Thank you. So I imagine that it's going to take us at least 2 more sessions to get through all the material, and possibly a third. So just so you know what to expect. And Lynn, do you have anything that you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, we will get you the complete list, and I am aware that some of the other elements do influence perhaps what we've covered today. So as much as I thought, oh, it's a perfect idea to do the SurveyMonkey on these 5 items, we might want to look at them again with the eye to the other elements that you might then feel influence how you might vote. So we'll do our best to give you the best way to give input.
Okay, Judith.
So are you going to be doing or do you know if you'll be doing this second Wednesday of the month going forward?
We do it a different day every month, just to include as many people as we can. So
okay,
it may not be a Wednesday.
Yeah. So the earlier one can know, the earlier one can put it on one's calendar.
Duly noted.
So
I hear you.
Once again, give a shout out to Kim for helping me figure out UTC. I will be able to attend meetings in the future. I've actually signed up for some and thought I was logging on when they were on, but they were not. Or I was not.
Yeah, UTC time can be tricky. Once you get it, you'll have it, but it can certainly be tricky. And it's a global thing. And it, just for other people in the room, it does not change when daylight savings time happens. So what's
Yeah.
UTC for you right now will be an hour later if you change your schedule to move your clocks ahead in the springtime, if you're in the northern hemisphere. So you just need to know that it's not, UTC time stays consistent. It doesn't change, which is why we use it, because if you know, in international situations, some people change their clocks, some people don't. The people that do don't change it on the same day. So it can be really crazy to say what time you're meeting unless you have a standard like UTC time. So that's why we choose that. It's also the same as GMT time for those of you who are more familiar with that. So again, thank you. You'll be getting this recording so that if you want to review it, we're also going to send it to the faculty who didn't come. We'll provide you with the list of the 16 points, and we'll also be sending out a Survey Monkey for people to actually vote on the things that we talked about today. So we can at least have 5 things down, and we'll be able to update the policy as we move through each month with all of you. So thank you very much. And I want to also thank Pat Roby. I think I forgot to do this in the morning, but Pat agreed to facilitate so that Lynn and I could participate. And Pat, we want to thank you very much. Pat, as you know, is the person who reviews excuse me, senior faculty applications if you're not in a stage 3 member organization. And she was, well, Al Katz was the first after William Glasser. Glasser chose Al, and then Al chose Pat to replace him. And she is a counselor educator at Governor State University. I forgot to introduce you and say that in this particular group. I did it in the morning, but forgot today. So those of you who don't know her, now you do.
Well, thank you. It was my privilege to be here and involved in this conversation. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next time.
Yay. Yes. Yes.
Thanks. All right.
Bye.
See you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye. So good to see you. Bye-bye.
Alive and kicking. Bye.